The federal government continues to seek ways to boost the nation's revenue drive as it laments hard times due to crippling oil production and dwindling fortunes in the global oil price. As the Nigerian government weighs its options, what's the bailout plan for the failing revenue drive in the country? It's question time. Welcome to the program. I'm Benga Ashiru. You may also join in this conversation by sending us a comment on our various social media platforms showing on your screen. The task of finding alternative ways of generating revenue falls on the shoulder of the Revenue Mobilization, Allocation and Fiscal Commission. It also monitors accruals and disbursements of funds into and from the Federation accounts. As the nation decries high cost of governance, what's the justification for the huge disparity in the remuneration of the political class and the working class? Channels TV crew caught up with Shetima Umar Abba Gana. Join us in this exclusive interview. Shetima Umar Abba Gana, thank you for joining us on this episode of Question Time.
Thank you.
Now let's start by having a clear understanding of the statutory mandate of the Revenue Mobilization, Allocation and Fiscal Commission.
The Revenue Mobilization, Allocation and Fiscal Commission has been granted certain functions by the Constitution, 1999 Constitution. The first mandate is to monitor accruals into and disbursements from into the Federation account and disbursements from the Federation account. The second function given to the Commission is to prepare and produce from time to time revenue formula for the allocation of this revenue. And the revenue formula are in two parts. There's a vertical one, which is determine how much the federal will keep, how much the states will receive, and how much the local governments will receive. Then the horizontal is amongst the states. How do you share it amongst the states? And also, how do you share amongst the local governments? The third function of the Revenue Commission is to recommend a remuneration package for political, judicial, and legislative office holders, right from the executive at the federal, right to the ones in the local government. The fourth function is granted to the Revenue Commission is to offer advice to the federal and the states and the local governments on ways and means that they can have an efficient fiscal system, and also ways and means of increasing revenue. That is the fourth function. And the fifth function is any assignments that are given to the Commission by the acts of national parliament.
Now, let's look at the first part of your statutory functions. That's accruals and disbursements. How do you monitor accruals?
We monitor accruals by demanding and receiving information from the major revenue generators. That's NNPC, DPR, FRS, Customs, and CBN. We demand information, we analyze the information, and then make recommendations to the FAC Committee for Allocation. We also go out regularly on verification and monitoring exercises to determine, to cross-check and check and see that what we were given by those agencies is correct, to verify the accuracy of that information granted to us by given to us by those agencies.
Does it mean the RMAFC doesn't have its own independent mechanism of monitoring these accruals from the government revenue generating agencies?
We are supposed to demand, the Constitution says, we demand data from them and records, and then we go back and monitor, go and verify and monitor that what they gave us is correct. These agencies are huge, and they have professionals all over the place doing this work. There's no way the Revenue Commission can duplicate their structures of the FRS and Customs and CBN countrywide, and also of NNPC internationally. So we still have to depend on their records, the data they give us, and also we go and do cross checks of some of this information to verify and to ensure that it's being monitored by us.
Now, you recently announced a proposed increment of 7.5% to 10% of value-added tax. Could you shed more light on this?
Yes. One of the mandates given to the Revenue Commission is to advise the federal, states, and local governments how to increase their revenue. In the situation where we are in now, where revenue has literally decimated by the collapse in the price of crude oil, it behoves on us to suggest ways and means of revenue generation. Now, we said VAT to increase from 5 to 7.5 or 10%, primarily because we studied the VAT in all our neighboring countries and some of these countries, and found out that the least in all these countries is 14%, some 18%, some a bit more than that. So even taking us to 7.5 or 10, it would still be lower than Benin, Togo, Ghana, South Africa, most of our neighboring countries. And therefore, that's why we suggested it. The Revenue Commission also, by its constitutional mandate, we may have to tell governments the truth, and that's why we are where we are. We have to tell the people and governments the truth, no matter how unpalatable it is. There's need for revenue increase, and these are one of the ways that we thought should be increased.
Isn't this ill-timed, looking at the increment in VAT, considering the prevailing harsh economic conditions? Are there not better options of generating revenues rather than mounting a heavier burden on the public worker who earns a minimum wage of 18%?
VAT is probably the most efficient and the most painless tax that can be placed on people. I did a recent analysis on even the 2.5%. And I said, well, a bag of rice is about 17,000. 2.5% will only increase that by 400 naira. But that 400 naira is probably not too burdensome on the person that is already paying 17,000. But 400 naira, if you spread it into all the payers, the federal government, the governments themselves will be able to generate a bit more revenue. They have to pay the salaries of all the workers. They have to provide the services that government is supposed to provide: military, security, health, education. There's a lot of work that all the governments at various levels have to do, and they need this support. And why the Revenue Commission mentioned any increases, because we also mentioned some other taxes that can also be brought in, is that most people don't want to pay tax because they feel that their revenue, their money will be stolen or will not be judiciously utilized. But we're in a situation where we have a very honest and disciplined president.
Aren't there better ways of generating revenue, since you mentioned that is the basis for increasing the value-added tax? We have reported leakages in public service and also the alleged alarming corruption in government service. Are you not considering this rather than mounting this huge burden on the public worker?
The point you've made have two components. The first component is the issue of monitoring and stopping leakages. The Revenue Commission has been doing that since its inception, monitoring and giving advice on how to stop some of these leakages. The Revenue Commission in the last few years made a lot of statements against payment of subsidy. Luckily now subsidy has been cancelled. We've been talking about removal of subsidy for a very long time. The Revenue Commission mentioned the issue of granting waivers on import duty for a lot of imports. We complained, and that is now being checked. We also complained about the granting of tax holidays to oil companies that buy oil blocks from the international oil companies. That too has now been suspended. So the Revenue Commission has been doing all its own level best to recommend areas where there are perceived leakages in the system. However, it is not the Revenue Commission that will go after these ones. These are now the job of the security agencies, ICPC and EFCC, and police, not really the Revenue Commission.
You may also join in this conversation by sending us your comments on our various social media platforms showing on your screen. Coming up on Question Time. Can the cry for bailout funds by some state government be justified? Find out from the Commissioner, Revenue Mobilization, Allocation and Fiscal Commission, Shetima, Umar, Abba Gana, after the break.